Yes, I know what you're going to say, but I'm biased about the 80s because that's when I grew up. But there really was something magical about the 80s. Artistic posing, for one. The way the people in the 80s used to pose, but smooth transitions from pose to pose, how they would hold it for the right amount of time, how when they posed, everything would splinter and separate. Nowadays, you just don't see that sort of dynamic separation happening. They look the same posed as they do when they're just standing there because their muscles are very blobby in the open as a result of growth hormone and insulin. They spent more time working on their balance. Look at Muhammad Makaway here. Just his perfect balance. The way he moves from pose to pose, even the way he holds his hands. Practiced, practiced, and practiced some more until he had his routine down pat. Absolutely perfect. Shocking background there, by the way. Here's Barry DeMay hitting some of his iconic poses. You know, if you had a silhouette, you'd know that it was Barry DeMay, no matter what. Creating drama, just showing the one bicep there again. I like that. So here he is hitting all his well-known poses, including his lower back. And of course, you can't go past Rory Leidenmeyer. What an incredible physique he had. And the way he presented it, you know, aesthetic as hell. Just there's posing for you in the 80s. Muscle in the movies. Now, as a young bodybuilder growing up in the 80s, muscle abounded. We had all the great action stars with incredible muscles. Yes, we had some muscles nowadays, but there was a certain raw, for want of a better word, masculinity about it. Oh, come on. You know, you can't get better than that scene, can you? You know, this iconic scene with Ivan Drago. Look at the great shape he's in. So this is what we're talking about. And the funny thing about movies in the 80s, when people would come out of a cinema, depending on which action star they'd seen, they would be copying them as they came out. You come out of an Arnold movie like Predator or Terminator, and everybody would be walking like him and going, oh, come on, do it now. Everyone would be mimicking him. When you came out of a Van Damme movie, people were doing moves in the street, and, you know, making the same sounds and so on. I think that was more of an Arnold than a Van Damme. Sorry about that. But, you know, there was a bit of a naive, I guess there was a certain naivety to it, but we just really looked up to our action heroes and the incredible physiques back then. And they were unashamedly masculine and... you know, you knew why you were there. You were there to watch an action movie with no woke nonsense. Stallone here, incredible shape. He worked really hard for his movies and achieved a bodybuilder's physique as well. So, you know, in the 80s, the muscle in the movies was very motivational. Epic fashions. I must admit, part of me thinks these fashions are a little bit tragic. Part of me misses them like crazy. Who remembers wearing happy pants like this? And who remembers the tank tops, which would basically string hiding nothing? We're all guilty of wearing these. Ben Fetto in a full body lycra suit. I didn't have one of those, thank God. But he can somehow pull it off. Great form there, by the way. But the boat-necked shirts that they used to wear, you know, those training tops with the wide neck where your traps would hang out. I used to love wearing those. And look, Haney here, he's got another string top. It almost looks like it's about to fall apart. You know, it's just so tiny. It's hardly worth wearing. It pretty much only hid the abs back in those days. Straden was another one for these tiny tank tops, and you know, he definitely made it work for him. He made a small fortune selling sports gear for bodybuilders, so good on him. But yeah, the happy pants and the bum bag at the front. The bum bag was always very handy to have when you're walking around the street. There we go. Quick shot of the intercostals for good measure. Now, I mentioned before that some of these tank tops look like they're about to fall apart. Well, To be totally honest, sometimes they did, as Mike Christian found out in this clip. So he's putting a bit of oil on for a photo shoot, and snap. Yep, we were just waiting for that to happen. That top's actually ridiculous. It's basically a shoelace. But he's fixed it up, ready to go again. And he must have one hell of a chest pump, because it's about to go again. Bang. So they weren't very practical, but you know, the muscle fashions certainly looked awesome. You know, all the guys had those do-rags on their heads. Good times. Exciting pose downs. Now, this one really gets me. Nowadays, pose downs just leave me cold. They stay in the one spot. It's so boring. It's almost like they're waiting to catch a bus. They may as well not even do anything. Back in my day, they would jump on and off the stage. They would challenge each other to a showdown. They'd get in each other's faces and, you know, pose in front of each other and nudge each other a little bit. There was a little bit of combative element to a pose down. Hey, here's some lats in your face, you know. I used to love watching a good pose down back in the 80s. And you would figure out who was the main man to beat, and you'd either go and challenge him, or, oh, there goes Bob Paris, almost knocked off the stage by Big Mike. But big Bob Paris was a big bloke as well. You know, he could hold his own in the mass stakes, believe it or not. He was known for his aesthetics, but he was a big guy, 6'1", I think, 6 or 6'1". Bit of a calf showdown there. And they would challenge who they thought was their real competition, and they would hit their best shots in front of them. There was actually a tactical side to a pose down back in those days, and it actually counted towards your overall marks. So I used to love a good pose down. In fact, I almost got into a fight during a pose down back in the late 1990s, but that's another story I'll put on here. Big Gary Stradum giving it all he's got there. He is huge there, isn't he? 1989, he really came into his own as a bodybuilder and had some regular showdowns with Mike Christian. Christian would win one, then Stradum. So by the time the pose down came round, the crowd would go nuts. Now, you can't hear it in this shot, but the crowd are going crazy in this. There we go, the pose down's over. And they acknowledge the crowd, and the crowd would go absolutely nuts at this time. Mohammed Benaziza there, the late Mohammed Benaziza. I was talking to John Torelli the other day about the awful time when he actually passed away. Would not have been good to be there. So they're meant to be relaxed now, but they're still giving it some. They refuse to give any quarter, and they're going to not be the last one to quit. So there you go. There's a taste of a 1980s pose down. How much better is it, eh? Waists under control. Now, this one really bugs me. In my opinion, the waist is one of the most important parts of being a bodybuilder. Look at the waist on Jean Marquis here. Just sensational. And if you're going to talk waist, you can't go past Lee Labrada. Here he is at the 1989 Mr. Olympia. And Olympia, I think he should have won, by the way. His waist looks phenomenal here, and he used to really put his time into making his waist nice and tight and well developed and defined. See here, he hits an ab shot. Look at those intercostals. Fantastic. And of course, a waist conversation can't be had without including big Brian Buchanan. Look at that. Wait till he hits a vacuum. It's coming up. Here we go. He's doing his pray to the gods pose. Look at that. Boom. Sucks his gut in for a vacuum and shows that tiny, tiny waist. If anything, I think his waist might have been a little bit too small. But look, he became famous for it. And the next thing that I really, really miss about the 80s are the quality magazines. The magazines are pretty much non-existent nowadays. There's only one bodybuilding magazine, and 90% of it is advertisements. Here's some old Iron Man magazines that I've got. quality of the photos were great, articles, the aesthetics were in. But 80s, good times.